Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Flow Party. I think it's like 34, which is insane. And today I'm super excited to introduce 8 people, right, from the Unfold team. We are going to be talking about branding, and this has been something that we've been wanting to do for so long. We actually met Michael and Iker from the Unfold team back in State of Flow. And we said, you know what? They're so good at what they do. Why don't we bring their brand team so they can tell us a little bit more about everything that they do in the brand department? And also we have here Eddie, who is the CEO of Unfold. So Eddie, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can start going through everybody else so we can get to know everyone.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Eddie. I'm a partner here at Unfold, and we are a small digital agency specializing in brand, web, and product. We do a lot of projects in in fintech, Web3, health industries, that kind of stuff. We're over 30 souls big. You see a few people from, here in this stream. What makes us special is we're just not only that, like, there's a lot of skill and talent here, but like a lot of us are just good people, like awesome people to hang with. We're all friends here, or so I think, and we often refer to each other as fam. And it's always every morning we look forward to like hanging out together. We have these morning huddles and like jam sessions where we're all collab together, which is a lot of fun. And we work with all sorts of like sizes of companies, small startups, like big giants like Facebook. And yeah, we try to just kind of, share that energy with our clients and be transparent with them, and open, and just having good relationships and enjoy our time. So I'll hand it up to someone else, like from our team, to introduce themselves. We'll start with Yamke.
Oh,
and maybe you pass it on to someone else.
Woo!
Yeah, everything stems from Eddie. Eddie, you're the man. So my name is Michael Yonke. I live in Indianapolis, and I'm part of the web team over at Unfold, and I do the web flow development for the sites that the web team, which is Alex, Benton, Iker, we make up the web team. And yeah, so that's me. I'm going to pass it over to probably Alex to keep the web team going.
Hey y'all, I'm Alex. I'm based in Kansas City, and like Yonke said, I'm part of the web team. So I get to work from based on the brands that the brand team creates. Benton and I create websites, and then we get to work with Yonke to help develop them in Webflow. So it's a really fun process to kind of see it all through. So excited to be here.
Nice. Who's next?
My name is Benton, senior web designer at Unfold, and I work with Alex and Iker and Yonke the most closely out of the team. Fun fact, Alex and I actually used to go to high school together, which is really funny. And
crazy.
Now we work together. Yeah.
I just found that out a week ago.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
When was the last time we talked together, like legitimately in high school, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and I remember seeing him on Dribble and be like, man, these designs are so good. Why does that name sound so familiar? You guys gotta check out his Etsy store sometime. He makes some awesome like national park calendars and stuff. But yeah, work with all these awesome people making web design, collaborating with the web team, which we'll definitely get into today. So I'll hand it off to Gabe.
Ooh, okay. Take the baton. Goob, I guess. We can also roll with that. So hey, I'm Gabe, I guess otherwise known as Goob on this call. That's going to be fun. I'm a brand designer here at Unfold. I'm based in LA, and I have the privilege of working with all these lovely people, and I'm happy to be here. So looking forward to it. And with that said, Daniel, you want to take it away, dude?
Wow, that was smooth, Gabe.
Sure.
Oh, he's so good.
So smooth.
Wow.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm a brand designer as well here at Unfold. I've been here about a little over a year, and I'm based out of Athens, Georgia. Yeah, I'm just excited that we get to talk about our process, and I'm going to hand it off to Andrea.
Oh, I was wondering who it would be. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea. I am the head of experience at Unfold. I come from a product design and UX background, and I'll use that as my segue to Evan. Take it away,
Thank
dude.
you. Yeah, hi, I'm Evan. I'm based in Minnesota and been with Unfold for 4.5 years, I think, or so. I'm one of 2 creative directors of product. So we get to make branding lives miserable as they think by using auto layout anywhere and everywhere we can. Even though it's actually really helpful, but you just have to know how to use it, guys. So that's okay. But anyways, I think that's everybody.
Awesome. Well, bravo.
Oh wow.
did it.
Honestly, like for whoever doesn't know this team, you please have to go to each of these people's showcase or links that we shared on the description, because when I tell you the talent that is here is unreal, I'm not even joking. So with that in mind, let's start with just some questions that I want to ask you guys, which I know the crowd has been asking us to ask you guys. So, and then after we can just go back and forth, however you feel comfortable. So the first thing everybody wanted to know at the flow party is how your creative process is when designing branding and web design on the same project. Because oftentimes we find that both things can be very connected. So we would just love to hear your thought process behind that and just the actual process that goes through that, I guess.
That's a big question. Hey, what's your process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We just want to know, like, okay, the client comes. Okay, what happens next? You know?
Yeah, I know we put together like a kind of something maybe we can use as reference. So it's like just a Figma file that we brought some projects into that some of the team put together, and I think that's probably easiest to reference maybe the process. And since I'm not on the brand team, I'll shut up and let somebody from the brand team talk about that.
Yeah, I don't mind speaking up just
Yeah,
for a
would y'all like
second.
this?
Oh, Daniel, you can take it, dude. That's all you.
No, you got
Oh
it.
no. Okay. All right. Yeah, so branding is interesting. It plays an interesting role at Unfold, mainly because it's the first point of contact that clients have with us in our agency. Really, branding just lays the foundation for everything else. So we like to run them through our branding process first. And just to keep the answer high level, right now at least, we like to make sure we have all the information that we need from the client's perspective, right? Having enough research is not just like a product design thing or a web thing, it's also a branding thing. So you want to make sure that you're well informed and that the decisions you're making are also in line with what their goals are, but also from a designer's perspective, what your goals are, right? It's like a mutually beneficial thing. So it's information first. We put together, and I'll probably run through this later. We put together some mood boards. So we like to have a visual direction first based off of that conversation and the strategy. And then after the mood boards, at that point, it's a matter of making sure we're aligned on a specific direction and then evolving that direction through concepts and iterations and just general refinement, and making sure that the client has a sense of collaboration throughout that process. We don't like to be siloed ever. So with that in mind, it's not siloed for the client side, but also not siloed on the website either. So making sure that once we have an understanding that the web team will also be, working alongside with us, it's like, hey, let's have these touch points. Let's meet. Let's make sure that you guys also understand the vision behind the brand. And again, we could showcase a little bit of what that process looks like. But a lot of it is just information, clarity, transparency, just keeping that communication line open. And then ultimately, once we do hand off like the final brand assets and we take them through our brand process, we stay in close communication with web to make sure that things are aligned and that the vision is cohesive and unified. So I think I maybe addressed maybe a little bit too much ? But yeah, hopefully that gives you some context as to, at least at a high level, what that looks like. So if anybody else has any other thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll
So
stop talking.
So the question, like for me, is like when you have like a brand project along with the web design project, both teams like they are working at the same time, or like the brand team like work on, for example, logos, visual assets, the like style guide, etc., and then it delivers to the web team. Then the web team takes over and start doing the work, or maybe the web team like work on a wireframe level until they have the brand assets, and then they implement. Because I like to know more about that, because at least for me, I think that both things are really connected, right? So when you created the concept for a brand and you're translating that concept into visual assets, sometimes the message and developer position you want to pass along with the brand project also makes sense to incorporate on the design like you're creating for design projects. So I think it's like both things are connected at the same time. So I'm very curious to know like how these teams work together to make sure that this the concepts, the how to translate that message into visual compositions, layout, visual assets, etc. How all this works together at Unfold. Big fan, by the way.
That's I can also probably answer that. I'm also curious as to when it makes the most sense to just show some of this stuff. This is like for the Unfold team, if we want to like share a screen and maybe walk through that.
Oh yeah,
because I think that would help
just share
kind of address those questions visually. We could show them the goods. Can we do that? Is that possible?
Show the goods.
Yay!
So I can do like a pretty quick overview of the brand process and then what that looks like in terms of handing this off into web. So we had the challenge of trying to condense everything from one of our brand projects into something that we could actually showcase here. And just to get a check, can everybody see the screen okay? So I'm not like talking into the void.
Yes.
I can see
thumbs
it.
up. Okay, cool. Perfect. All I needed to hear. So yeah, this is actually from an NFT project that we had. We had a company approach us. They had a previous visual identity that, you know, was okay, but it wasn't where they wanted to go. But what was really interesting about this project is that they had this desire to lean into ancient Greek themes and motifs. So that was such an incredible brief because it opened the door to so many different possibilities from a design perspective. It wasn't just like another traditional Web3 company, right? It was something that was just a little unconventional. And I love the idea in brands of referencing the past to inform your future and you know, that dichotomy. So with Hector in specific, we wanted to take that approach and we really wanted to lean into like this retro modernism aesthetic, you know, again, playing off of that past and future idea. And with that client, we showed them, like we show every other client, the mood boards, right? And the mood boards is like that first point of contact where they get a sense of what we're thinking, where we want to go, where we want to take them. And the way that we described it is through these keywords normally. So with this overall mood, we're looking at, okay, this to us feels traditional, it feels sculpted, and it feels sophisticated. And with that as the foundation, we want to be able to reference images that play into those keywords. So what I think is, okay, sculpted looks like chiseled text, right? Chiseled type. It's like taking these words and developing things that can be actionable. So chiseled type is something that we can find and the web team can actually use, right? Or maybe it's iconography. To me, this feels sophisticated. It's very clean cut. You know, it has an element of just no nonsense. You can use this and it would be fine. You know, very utilitarian. But then you have these design elements that like implement the modernism, but also have the type, you know, so when I'm talking to you right now, it's very similar to how I would be on a client call, you know, just walking them through all these things so they have an understanding of where we're coming from. Again, that's just the transparency and the clarity. You want to get buy-in from the client so that they trust your vision. And once you have that point, once you reach that inflection point, more often than not, it's smooth sailing. So that's direction one. And then direction two takes a very different approach. Still has some of those geometric elements, but you notice the color palette is significantly brighter. Right now, we're leaning into more of these like trendy-esque colors. Really, the biggest point here is the red. I think the red is like the core to all of this, right, and just ties it all together. But ultimately, the client picked direction one, and I pushed for that. I said, "This is where it's at, you guys. Like, just give us the go ahead to run with this, and we're gonna do it." So with that in mind, we took some mood boards. Sorry, not some mood boards, some frames. From the project so that you could see a little bit of what that exploration process looks like. And really, our exploration is super iterative, and it's just brain dumps on brain dumps, and we're just trying to push as many ideas out as possible, at least in the beginning. We like casting a wide net and then refining to something that we can, align on. So we had some really interesting concepts here, right? Like things like this, integrating that H element. We loved referencing the columns because it had that sense of structure and that sense of geometry that we talked about in the beginning, right? But it's also the H monogram, right? So these three, we knew from the beginning, we're like, oof, we got to roll with these and continue pushing that. This idea of maybe having a responsive mark, so this could be like a really cool loading element, right? The columns going up and down, things like that, right? It's just, again, a wide net. Looking into word marks, right? This does not feel Web3, but that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to position them in a way that was unconventional and leaned into that historical element. So using types like this that is a little bit more humanist, that maybe has a little more of that chiseled element to it, and just keeping in line with that. There was another concept, can't remember where it was because there's so much to show here, but there was, a ton of concepts that we do like, and it's our job as designers, right, to guide the client along through that process and to, again, make them feel included, make them feel like they have a say, because their say is important. This is also for them as much as it is for you. So keeping in line with that, we like to show them our favorite options. We like to talk through those options, and you can ultimately end up seeing what the final mark was. They selected this, and it was a combination of a few other things that we were talking about. So we love this mark. We said, let's just roll with it. Let's continue pushing it. Let's see where we can take it. But I think the biggest thing for us was the word mark, because this is simple enough, right? It makes sense. It's iconic. It has this element of rigidity to it. I know it can stand the test of time, but the challenge is, what do we pair in terms of a word mark that accompanies this and makes this feel cohesive? This was a starting point. This wasn't the final one. And I want to show you what that process was real quick. So I'm going to skip over all of this. So if I told you this was the first mark, you wouldn't believe me. But it was like, this was just a pure brain dump. Like, let's just get something on the board. And you could see that iteration over time and over time and over time. You could see the letter forms refining and getting to a point where it's like, okay, this actually might have the legs to run. And this is what it's about. It's just pushing and pushing your ideas to the point where it gets to that like buy-in, that moment where you're like, this makes sense. And I'm still going, this is insane, right? But that's the level of iteration that we do to get to a point where we like it. So to save you the actual doom scroll that this is, we ended up getting to this point here, where now we're starting to look at like really, really minute details, right? We're looking at how each of these chisels are interacting with each other. We're looking at negative space. We're basically creating type from scratch. And some projects demand that level of attention. Others, not so much. It really is just like a per basis thing. But we knew we wanted to get this right. So we ended up at this point where we had this as our final mark, our word mark, that referenced the logo mark that we established beautifully, because it's one-to-one. It's entirely custom. And then we wanted to push it a little bit further, just to, really nail that ancient Greece, almost Romanesque aesthetic with the bevel and emboss and the chisel type. And I know that some people might say, hey, that's a little dated, bro, but here we are. And the client loved it. So it's one of those things, you take those risks. So I want to run through the concept presentations really quick, because I think this also addresses that inflection point between branding and web handoff. So this is where web starts to have an understanding of visual direction. And not to speak on behalf of the web team, but I do think this is a pretty important part where they get to see the brand in action, because it's not just, for brand people, it's not just the logo, it's how everything else works together. You're creating a system, you're creating an identity, right? And I know that's like a buzzword, but again, it's not just a logo, it's not just a type. Anybody can do that, right? The biggest difference is how you take those elements and apply it to create something holistic. So we have two concepts that we like to present. We don't like to normally do more than that, because I think we start to lose a sense of direction. And again, it's more of a time input to create three. So two feels a little bit more refined. So to run through this one real quick, we're emphasizing the depth, we're emphasizing the texture. We have this gorgeous like marble element in the background that we wanted to use throughout the identity. Again, just referencing, it all comes back to the mood boards, right? You're always referencing that conversation. You're always referencing that strategy. So that's kind of like that initial point where like, okay, that's our texture. We'll roll with this. Very simple, like underlying grids. This could be a little arbitrary sometimes, but it's always cool to see the construction of your marks if it makes sense. Color palette situation here, pretty high level. We're not getting super granular, but we're just giving them a sense, right? Little tidbits of what that looks like. We have some typography laid out. The client requested that they had free options. So that, from a designer's perspective, that's a challenge because you want to find good typefaces. We used, I think this was both through Adobe fonts. So just so you know, Matrix 2 and I think it's Nouveau Grotesque were the front runners for this option in particular. We have scalability. That's a really important factor. Does this work on a bigger scale as it does as a small scale? If it doesn't pass the scale test, you might want to rethink your approach. It's just like a general rule of thumb. An app icon, we always like to throw that in there, especially since this is a digitally facing product and not so much print. We just like to try to cover as many bases as we can at this touch point. And then this, I feel like I might get like roasted for this, but it is what it is. I'm not a web designer at all. And I don't know, there's always this thing of like, devs are like, why is he designing something I can't do? This is impossible to develop. Anyway, I don't think this would be the case for this. But we do like to have a general sense of like where we want to take the web design. And this is the key thing. If you take one thing away from what I'm saying is from our perspective, right? How we collaborate with the web team, we never want to pigeonhole them and put them into a corner and say, this is exactly how you do something. Because for us, that's like a point of diminishing returns. You want to exercise and you want to promote that creative freedom that allows for those moments to happen. So for us, it's like, this is a starting point. You can run with it from that point on, right? So to answer the question that I heard in the beginning, it was a matter of, okay, what was that? I lost my train of thought. It was the question of
how the design and the brand and the web design team work together, like they work in parallel. Or
right. Thank you. Sorry, I like hit a wall. So no, it's not always in parallel. I would say it's up until a certain point. I think the brand team takes what we do and works with it up into a certain point that it's enough and has enough of a foundation to give it off to the web team. So it's not so much in parallel because what we've noticed in the past is that parallel, you have a sometimes a conflict of ideas. You don't have a vision fully fleshed out yet. You more often than not run into more problems than you do solve. So it's a delicate balance between how early do you want the web team involved versus the web team being completely left out and siloed, right? It's somewhere in between that. So as a brand person, you want to make sure you have your ideas in a point where they're foolproof and you can communicate that to someone else. And once you have an understanding and you could sell that idea to someone, then they can also run with it because they have buy-in, right? So if that answers your question, it's not necessarily in parallel, but it's more of like a handoff inflection moment where you're like, okay, now it makes sense for you to come in and start iterating on these ideas because we have a foundation. So I wanted to address that so I didn't forget. I feel like I'm taking up a ton of time. My bad. I just wanted to run through this.
This is amazing. Like, thank you for showing all of this. Like, this literally made my week. Like, I'm gonna rewatch the live stream like several times because I love seeing this creative process going from the initial mood board to the concepts for the logo, and then like all the iterations on the typeface. It's amazing. Like, it's a joy to see that kind of stuff as a designer. I love it.
Good. That makes me happy. I'm glad that you enjoy it, and we have a little bit more to go, so I'll try to speed it up just a little bit. But yeah, really, all we're doing here with the presentation is just selling the idea. Again, like if we take the client along through the journey and they have an understanding of where we're going, that's a good thing. But to really sell it, you have to be able to mock it up. You have to be able to, put it in a place that they can really grasp the vision as well. And this is one of those things where, is this necessary, having a coin? Absolutely not. No, like this took so much time, but you know what? It's one of those things where we do it, we show it to them and they're like, oh, whoa, you guys thought of that? And we're like, yeah, we thought of that. We did. And we want you to be able to think of those things because that's the potential. It's showing the potential of the stuff that you're doing. Not necessarily that it makes the most sense or that it's the most time efficient, but clients more often than not appreciate the extra mile moments. And this is one of those things. So yeah, we mocked up a coin and we put it on a marble background because why not? We have that freedom and that flexibility. So to wrap up this guy, we just do the favicons, right? So we want to think through that as well from a brand and web perspective, making sure that the assets are scalable and that they can use them. and then some sub-branding situations here. So we're looking at how we can apply the mark to facilitate sub-brands, because I know that they had an interest in expanding into different sectors. So this was an approach at that. And then, yeah, just a very simple like splash page at the end. This could have been for like live stream graphics or, you know, whatever. But again, it's just showing the brand's potential, even with something like this, where we have a Hector-based pattern off onto the side. And then this is their competitors at the time. Oh, that's a artifact. There you go. So yeah, those were the competitors at the time. They have Olympus, there's Wagny Dow, there's Wonderland, you know, so they were going up against some heavy hitters, in particular Olympus. And that was a big challenge to figure out how to differentiate Hector from Olympus, because they both had that like, you know, ancient Roman Greek vibe and aesthetic, or leaning into that to a certain degree. So that's the first one. Oh my gosh, I'm like super self-aware of how much I'm talking. If I need to shut up, please tell me.
Don't worry, we can keep
We are
hearing you
loving
talking
it.
the whole live
Okay.
stream. Don't worry.
I
Keep going.
listen. I want to be respectful of a. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. If this whole branding thing doesn't work out, you know, I'll start a podcast. So okay, this is the second option, and I'll run through this again a little bit quicker. So this one was interesting because it was, how do we manifest the same ideas throughout this entire project into a different visual representation? So for us, it's looking at different color palettes, it's different treatments, and this is a different mark altogether. I ultimately love the mark they went with, so I'm glad they picked this one. Spoiler alert, they picked that one. But yeah, this is the second concept that we showed them. Underlying grid, this is all constructed with the circles minus the chisels. But again, the chisels are a direct reference to that word mark that we looked at earlier. So you could see exactly how those two are referenced to each other and how they are cohesive. The color palette is a very warm color palette based off of that mood board image from the beginning that had a lot of these like sunset vibes and like just that golden hour. For me, I love that in photography, as cliche as that is, but I wanted to be able to put that into the color palette in some way. So that's where that orange is coming from. It's not, you know, it's not unfamiliar. And it's interesting because if clients do, you know, see this, they go, oh yeah, I've seen that before. And there's like a traceability and a linearity there that they always seem to appreciate. So, you know, if you can reuse assets and reuse frames of thought to just put them in this way, it's helpful. They can contextualize it better. So we're using free fonts again. I think so. Again, Adobe fonts, just having a little bit of an expanded typeface suite. So Halyard is technically just one suite, and it's supported by Nico or Neko. And this was an example that I designed for a landing page. Again, so just another idea for Hector in particular, just to show them the type treatments, to show them potential CTAs. I'm all about those rounded corners. Don't at me. 8-pixel life, and then, you know, the marble hand. That was an interesting element. We wanted to include, just whether it was arbitrary or not, regardless, we just wanted to put it there to evoke a feeling more so than like hard truths. I think that's the biggest thing. Very similar things here. The scalability element, the same favicon, an app icon here. You see how it looks like on an iPhone. And then I know that they had their own stable coin, so I went ahead and just rebranded this on a whim, I guess, and just tying in those elements that we established before. So Hector basically had the same exact letter forms and the actual word mark as TOR. It's literally the last half of that word mark. So it wasn't a challenge to take, you know, Hector and then just take the TOR and then brand it in a way that made sense for their stablecoin. So reusing assets is always a big time save too if you're able to do that. Here's my version of the coin, you know, so there's that super dramatic with the shadows. Geez, but there you go. And then yeah, some sub branding, followed by some live stream elements, followed by the competitors, followed by this little, you know, Greek Romanesque pattern situation. And I love how this referenced that Greek pottery, if you're into that. I forget what era of Greek pottery that's from, but anyway, I think that's it from a brand perspective. Yeah, that was a lot. So thanks for listening. Appreciate that. And I don't know, Benton, if you wanted to talk about any any of the things that I mentioned in terms of like a brand perspective, or walk through the file on anything else, just so I can actually take a sip of water and stop talking and leave the floor for everybody else. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Thank you. This was amazing. Yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Beautiful stuff.
I was gonna say we want to get into like the in between, like the brand handoff and web, And Gabe did a really good job at just talking about the overall brand process. I know I myself love to see all the nitty-gritty details and the behind the scenes. So thanks for walking us through that. That was really good. Before we do that, we're gonna have Daniel run through this another brand project, and then we'll get into the handoff between brand and web. But does anyone have any questions or anything first before we jump into that?
This whole process happens only on Figma. Like all the you guys show like logo design, the type design, all the small refinements. Everything happens on Figma. It's not like, because some people say, oh, Figma is not designed to like do branding work, design logos, work with typography, custom typefaces. So yeah, I was just wondering if that's the case on Unfold, or if you guys just do the whole thing in Figma.
Yeah, Eddie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I would say there's a reason Eddie has a custom license plate.
It's true. And that was before Adobe acquired it. But yeah, we do everything Figma.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any limitations.
If that wasn't clear, that's his vanity plate. It says Figma on his vehicle.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, that's nice.
Don't look at me.
That's
Sorry,
actually
Eddie,
a
called
good
you out.
idea. You can do one for Webflow, Michael.
I'm gonna get on it. They really are obsessed with Figma though. Like,
Melissa,
when I came in.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I have a question actually for Gabe.
Yeah.
I asked this earlier. I think it got lost in the chat. How do you? I mean, from like a branding effort, how do you guys know when is like the right time for, a client to have a logo mark and a word mark, or one or the other? Because like with that particular project that you just showed off, you had that like column-esque H, and then you've also got like the actual word mark. And when do you guys decide between those two? And then as a non-related follow-up question, are you guys leveraging AI at all, like with your projects recently? Because I know you're getting into like the NFT stuff, and I figured they're kind of tangentially related.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, I think in terms of when we know when the right approach is, it's just an ongoing conversation. It's not something that we make and we say, oh, haha, here it is. Like, this is what we're proposing and this is what we're going to run with. We also get their input. But it's also based on strategy too. We want to see what the competitors are doing and how they're positioning their brand, right? So if all of their brands have word marks and logo marks, right, we get a temp check of what that looks like. And if we want to be against the grain, right, that's a strategy thing. If we want to be against the grain, then we don't more often than not, we don't do both. We prioritize one over the other. Like in Hector's case, we were actually really proposing to just stick with the word mark because it's such an iconic name, like Hector. That's sick, and it's so balanced, and it has a nice ring to it. But then once we established a mark that we really liked, it was easy to rally behind. So it's so dependent on the client needs and the environment, and what the end goal is, at least at that point in time. So I'm not trying to answer your question with the question, but it is very dependent, and it's hard to say like this is the perfect solution. It's just a matter of working through those things together, right? I'm a big advocate for collaboration with design. It's not just like, I don't like to make arbitrary decisions. I like to make my decisions, informed and based on something. So that's, if that answers your first question. And then for the AI question, I would say that's something that we're still exploring on. I know that there are other folks on the team who are really into AI. I know we had one of our team members just develop an entire comic book using AI generated imagery that has since gotten like almost 2 million views on Imager, like just absolute crazy nonsense stuff. Like, I can't believe that those are the numbers he's pulling. So there is some exploration there. And then there is an interest to look at that. From a brand team's perspective, I know that we've dabbled, we've looked into it. We've created some images and some assets using AI. I think some of it is an apprehension because it's like, is AI going to take my job one day? Who knows? I don't know. So no, we do use it. We are interested in learning more about it. I think it's one of those evolving and emerging spaces that is going to change the way that, people perceive and look at art and all of that. So yeah, we're approaching it. But I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but that's just, from where I'm coming from. Again, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Marce had a question here, and he asks, how long would this project take? Just the branding side of it.
So for the project that I showed Hector in specific, I don't actually remember how long this engagement was. But I would say, from what I remember, probably like 6 weeks. I could be totally wrong. This is just like a feeling. I think this was maybe like a 5-6 week engagement that we were able to do this work. And some are much longer. Some can go on for months. It really just depends on the client needs and the scope and all of that. But Hector in specific was, I think, like a 5 or 6 week project.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay, we're ready for the next part.
Daniel, do you want to take over and walk us through SafePal and then kind of how we handed it off to Web?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. So I really like this project. It's a little bit different than like our normal kind of branding project because we had a more extended period with SafePal. So SafePal was another big player in the Web3 space. They have a physical product, which is their it's called an S1. It's like a hardware wallet for your crypto, and they also have a digital version of it as well. But before I go into it, I just want to kind of talk to like our team specifically at Unfold. So before I started working with Unfold, I was the only designer at my company, and then jumping into Unfold, there's 30 plus people here, and everyone's a designer here, and I just love the collaboration that we have with everyone, and it's all like get all these cross disciplines together. You have web, brand, product, and they all have different kind of backgrounds and all have different unique perspectives. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that really makes us unique and fun to be around and to work with, is because we are very good at collaboration and a lot of there's not a lot of egos here. So, we'll all be in a file together working. You'll see a cursor come over and kind of yoink something that you're working on and iterate on that, and just like a lot of just iterating together, camaraderie. And I think it's one of the things that makes us successful as a company. And I'll kind of speak to that with SafePal. So the SafePal, we had like I said, a more extended kind of engagement with them. We had, I think, 9 or 10 weeks with them. Our usual engagement for brand is about 4 weeks, but they had some other things that we wanted to kind of work on. They had some packaging that we worked on that was a lot of fun that we got to do. But yeah, so we were working on it, and we kind of had a good sense of the branding about week 4 or 5, and that's when kind of Web started to engage with them. But we were still kind of, trying to flesh out brand stuff while they were working on web stuff. So it would be cool to see that we'd be working on stuff for the brand side, like some of the packaging, some of the other kind of things that they had requested us to give them. See like the web team, which was Ben and Alex, come in and like looking at what we're working on and kind of pulling from that directly live. Me and Dennis, who led on this project, he's another brand designer here. We would go into the web design files and see what they're doing and kind of pull ideas off of them. So it's just a very collaborative kind of experience with them. And yeah, it just turned out to be a really successful project overall. Yeah, it's kind of, you guys want to kind of go through the project at all, or just you guys want to talk about the web handoff?
Yeah, that would be super interesting.
Show everything.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Everything.
Zoom on in.
Yeah, Daniel, show the illustrations and the final mark for
That's the packaging.
SafePal. Yeah, and the packaging.
These illustrations
Yeah,
are so good.
so
they're crazy.
Like Gabe said with Hector, we like to present mood boards. Sometimes clients don't always they like certain things from one mood board and certain things from another. In that case, we kind of come together and pull those ideas and create another third direction. So this is kind of our direction for before SafePal jumping off. Then we like to also do sometimes are called mind maps. So we kind of take these abstract ideas that we pull from strategy and just kind of ideate on what kind of visual representations we can pull from those abstract ideas and kind of just use that as a starting point for creating those visuals. Then we, jump into kind of exploration. One of the ideas we were playing with SafePal was the idea of vaults and safes. So you see, we kind of take this idea of like the turnstile for a safe and kind of iterate on that, creating different ideas. So a big thing was like we wanted to create a sense of safety and protection because this is something that people are putting their investments in, and we wanted that to create that sense of safety and that is being protected. So we went through a number of marks, kind of presented some marks. Another key thing for us is we like to kind of check in with our clients throughout the process, maintain really good communication with them. And it helps get buy-in along the way. So you're not having to kind of show everything all at once and having to make a decision on that. You're getting buy-in at each kind of step. So we checked in and showed them some of our marks that we were kind of liking. This one is kind of a unique project where the client really zeroed in on this logo and really fell in love with this mark. And so we just ended up just focusing on this mark and kind of iterating on that and creating a brand around that. So we presented kind of two different variations of what a brand could be for SafePal using that mark. We had two different logo types. We had this one up here, which they ultimately ended up going with. We also had this version as well. So just walking through that. This one is also, we had to come up with a design system for their products. So they had, their S1, which is their hardware wallet, and they had a Cypher, which is another product. And they also had these digital projects that we had to come up with a design system for. We also presented two different iterations of a color palette, very similar. Two options for type. And we also developed this illustration style for them, which they really liked. So ultimately, again, with the like what happened with the mood boards is they ended up liking multiple things from each one of these presentations. They really loved this illustration style, but they also really loved the packaging, which Dennis really knocked out of the park for SafePal. Just looks really cool, really sleek packaging for their wallet. So we kind of combined those all together and ended up with kind of our final project or final presentation of what their brand is. Have the packaging, illustration style, how we use those illustration styles, close-up of the mark, illustrations, how to use those illustrations for prints, color palettes, typography, kind of design system for their logo.
Daniel, do you want to mention the needing multilingual support for the typography?
Yeah. So one of the unique things too for them was they are a global company and their product is kind of used in a multitude of countries. So they needed a lot of support for their type. And there's not a whole lot of types that feature the amount of languages they needed. And so one of the ones which was their type that they currently had was Alibaba Sans. So we explored different options for type, but ultimately we decided Alibaba Sans was the best because it supported, 270 plus languages, which was really cool. And so we decided to stick with that as the type. Yeah, so we presented that, and then once we present the brand and the brand gets approved, we do a little handoff with the web team, talk about our thoughts behind the brand and what we were thinking, and then we let them run wild with it and see what they create.
I know that you guys keep it pretty open on the feedback loop with the client. I think you guys don't have like a specific number of feedback included in your price. So when you presented this, did you get a lot of feedback from the client where you had to come and go a lot of times, or was it just we love it, run with this, and or how did that happen?
Yeah, so we like to do a lot of kind of engagement throughout the process. So every bit of process that we walk through, we have a meeting with them to kind of see what they think of it. So like with the mood boards, they saw the mood boards and we had to reiterate on another mood board, which didn't take too much time, but they got buy-in with the brand with this. They really liked kind of the direction with this. So that was one point of buy-in for them. The next was just kind of showing exploration and showing just a range of possibilities for the logo and just getting buy-in along the way with that. You know, sometimes they want us to iterate more on logos, but we have that built into our timeline to where we have that flexibility. So if they don't particularly liking certain things we're doing, you have time to, you know, iterate more on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we keep our Figma docs open to for our clients to hop in anytime and observe and collaborate. So it's, you know, that I feel like that's also like what kind of makes us different, because we don't just treat them like clients. They come in and, oh, you have this many iterations. Well, it's more like a partnership. You know, we just work together, and being able to like be in Figma in the same document at the same time gives us less ability to, like, you know, quickly address any kind of issues, or, you know, do the iterations, or make sure that nothing, you know, gets off the rails.
Yeah, that's kind of like our MO is the collaboration, not just with each other. And we mentioned this at the start, but with the client too. So we'll establish weekly touch points, and we have asynchronous communication throughout the entire project with the client. They get invited into our Figma file, and they get invited into Slack, and we just keep that line of communication open, so they're always involved throughout the process.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, I know we've had even some clients have like the Figma file open on like their TV screen in their like meeting room, just like on all the time. So if they ever want to check it, I think it's just like they really enjoy being part of that process.
And we don't know either, because we got nothing to hide.
Right. I just feel like when they're watching, I do everything wrong. It's like too much pressure, you know? But that's a great approach.
Every once in a while, if you find a client's cursor by you, if you like start typing a message to them, like saying hey, or you like wave at them, they usually leave. So you can try to call them out on it. So
Pro tip, Evan.
Yeah.
I like the Webflow. It's not necessarily, you can't see people move from like element to element, and that collaborative, to be honest. But
just you wait, Yankee.
Yeah, I know, right? One other thing I do like that Unfold does a lot is, in addition to the meetings and stuff that Daniel was referencing, a lot of times at the end of the day, they'll record a loom of their progress and just talking through their process and how they landed on things, and then send that out. And it just always keeps people up to date. And I think that's kind of nice.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we have like once we plan the project, we have like scheduling where we have like few calls. We schedule a few calls to check in per week to make sure, you know, we stay in sync and there's no surprises.
Love that. Maggie, you want to ask your question?
There you go.
Yeah, hi. This is amazing. Thank you for sharing all of this. So it sounds like there's no real revision limit or rounds. So I'm curious how you balance that, you know, working till they're happy kind of approach with handling your other workload, and if everyone's getting that treatment, or if you kind of make an exception for certain clients, because if they all get whatever they want, as long as they want, you would never be able to balance all of your work. So I'm just curious how that works.
I know we're all looking at each other, being like, "Who's going to answer this?"
I could take it.
Go for it.
From a brand point of view, because branding gets tricky. I'm sure as with many other departments, people want everything all the time at that exact moment. And yeah, managing that can get really tricky. But the thing I like to stress with clients in particular is that you're paying for this time. So if you're going to take as long as you're going to take, just know that that's coming out of your pocket. And that's sometimes a difficult conversation to have. But it's one of those things where we want to be collaborative and we want to make sure that we're designing something that you want to see. But just know that if you're going to take 3 days to come back to us with something, right, that you're going to pay for those 3 days and we're going to be sitting on a project, right? So it is like a delicate balance, and it does get to a certain point where timeline is king, and we want to make sure that we stay on, time and on budget, and we meet those client expectations. And you just got to sit down and be like, listen, as casual, just like that. Hey, listen, don't even worry about it. No, just, you got to tell them like, we're at a certain point where if we continue making revisions, we're not going to make progress on anything else. And if that's a decision they want to actively continue making, then we let them, right? But more often than not, they're like, oh, okay, thanks for the heads up. Let's narrow this down and let's continue pushing on something like this in an ideal world. So from a brand point of view, like if I'm leading a project, that's how I would like to approach it, is just be transparent, appreciate their time, but let them know that once you hit a certain point and you have the foresight as a designer to be like, yeah, we're not going to have time to do all these extra deliverables if you're going to take up time based on revisions. So to answer your question more or less, it's a balance. It really is a balance. And again, just communicate.
So does that mean you charge by the day or hourly and there's no cap? It's just like whatever you want to use, you get to use?
Does someone else want to be more specific? There you go.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I'm speaking for somebody else at the moment, so I'm going to do my best. But as far as I understand it, and Eddie, please correct me if I'm wrong, we do book in time slots. So we agree on a general scope. We book a set number of time, and the client understands that they're going to get X number of deliverables by the end of that time. They're more than welcome to revise and collaborate and give feedback, and we're going to do that. But if they want to adjust the scope along the way, that's fine, so long as we have the time to accommodate that. And that's all part of that open communication. So it's very rare that we have surprises or anyone gets stuck at any point.
Yeah, that's correct.
You go ahead, Eddie.
Yeah, and I guess there's always clients that don't know what to expect and how things go, and for that reason, we have like sprint packages where we work together for a week and see how we're working together. Like if they're a good fit, we're a good fit, and usually they end up, converting into full-blown projects. So
yeah, I think the only thing I was going to add is like a lot of times at the beginning of the projects, in general, we'll kind of timeline things out and have key milestone moments along the way, and then we can use that as kind of an incentive to help the client make some decisions. And if they don't, then they just know that those other items are going to be impacted. And so you may get less time for something that they, were maybe planning on more for, which that's just a conversation that has to happen with the client and come to an agreement that like, hey, maybe it is worth like spending a little bit extra time on this first part, and then we can compromise and have less time on this, or maybe they're okay to add an extension at the end of the project. So we really use the timeline as kind of the talking point, and it's just kind of on us to make sure we let them know and communicate with them as to like if we're on pace to meet the set milestones along the way, or if like, yeah, if we're ahead of time, we can get to things faster. So
I also like that, like in Slack, we pin all the important documents between us and the client, where the timeline or the objectives and everything right there in Slack. And if there is an issue where we're going off timeline or something, it's not necessarily, doesn't always fall back on the designer to have that hard conversation. We, Alicia on our team, she can step in and be that voice in their specific Slack channel and just call that out and let them know like, hey, we are behind, or because of this, we need to do this, and kind of leave that relationship untouched between the client and the designer too, if needed.
Devin has a question. I'd like to know, when was the last time you made something that a client just flat out didn't like and you couldn't seem to reach an agreement, and how that went?
That's a fun one.
Could you ask it again? I'm sorry. When was
When was the last time you made something that a client didn't like and you just couldn't seem to reach an agreement, and how did that go?
Guys, has this happened? There's
Oh
the
my
sign.
God, you
happens
guys
to
are
everyone.
blessed. We ask it because it happens a lot to people in the community, you know, I mean, everybody. Sometimes it has happened to me. I show a design and the client is just like, I don't
Well,
like it. And it's
hey,
just like trying to go ahead.
yeah, I can speak a little bit about that. Like we did have a few times like where the client came back like I don't like it. So um and we had to kind of take a few steps back and like kind of re-listen to them what their feedback was, because we don't like it doesn't mean a whole lot, you know. You need to know what it is, you know. It needs to be a little more constructive than just don't like it, because don't like it doesn't help. And by communicating, and it doesn't happen too often, but like I remember there was a few cases a while back where we actually walked client through how we addressed all their concerns and how we actually, you know, we we deliver like a working concepts, and by just walking them through in detail and like showing them maybe more process of how we got there, they're actually like it did happen a few times where like they were just like, wow, we actually love this concept or design or whatever. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that, you know, just communicate, I guess, be more open and transparent. Yeah, don't hide, don't just go in your corner, do some concept, do your designs, and then show it to a client, hope that they like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, like if we're just like butting heads or like we're just not making any progress, like a lot of times I think what we've learned is that there's just like a lot of that stuff just comes from a miscommunication, and it's just we don't even know exactly where that is. So a lot of times, like we'll just have to take a step back, get on a call, and just try to really talk through and understand like where they're coming from, and do some detective work in some cases to really understand like what are their goals, what are they actually trying to say, or where did we miss the mark? Because a lot of times like design systems, style guides, brand books, like all those things mean different things to different people. And those are more like deliverable sided things, but it's just, I don't know, we deal with clients from across the world, like in different cultures. And so like the way that things are communicated in some places may come off as like really crude and forward, but a lot of times that's just the nature of the conversation and the way that culture is. So I think there are always times to like take a step back and make sure that we're being intentional about hearing things in the way that they're trying to say them. And so a lot of times, I don't know if there's a better answer than just like meaningful conversations and taking a step back to really try to hear them out.
Yep.
I
Love
think
that.
I saw Benton just put this in the chat. It's what I was gonna say to Benton, but like there's never, I think Iker used the word big reveal. There's never like, here's the logo, here's what we're giving you. It's, you know, I don't want to speak for the brand team either, but it's a process where it's step by step and always checking in. They may not like the thing you just did in that small portion of the entire process, but they're not going to keep moving forward with something you don't like. So you never get just a really bad end product.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Love
it took us a
that.
while to get to this. Yeah.
Love
get
that
to this process.
transparency. I love that. It's true. I mean, you know, sometimes your process is so private, and design is just so subjective. Like you show it to the client and they're thinking something completely different. And if you keep it close like that, it's just so hard for them to just be like slap in the face. This is what came out of my head. You know, it's like very strong, you know, but keeping it open is cool. Okay, we have a question from YouTube. Do you, for the web team, do you get the content from the client, or do you prepare it by yourself? In case of client handling the content, how do you collaborate with them?
Alex, this one's for you.
Okay. Yeah, good question. And it's something that we're trying to figure out, I think, more and more on the web team, because it varies. I'm sorry, I've got a random phone call. Sorry about that. It depends on the client. So we've had a variety of clients who come to us and they just want like a duplicate version of their existing homepage or the existing full website. So we had a more recent project where they just wanted sort of a one-to-one. All the content was, carefully crafted over months and months, and so they wanted to keep all that content the same, but obviously have a whole, brand new refresh look and feel to things. On the flip side, we've also had tons of clients who come in and don't really know what they want, and so we work with copywriters internally and on sort of a freelance basis that get ahead of the project and usually work with our strategy team as well, and even with some of the brand team, and sort of craft some of that content ahead of time so that we have something to go off of. And that sort of ebbs and flows as we're kind of in the web design process as well. As we're designing things are always kind of constantly evolving and changing. And so we might have copy or something that changes. And so we're having to kind of, factor that in and come up with some new layouts or something to accommodate that, or kind of swap in text. So it's sort of a evolving process that we're trying to get better and better at, to say, like, helping clients who come in and don't really know what they want, helping them kind of direct and make design decisions based on, our expertise, to make recommendations based on where they could have the content lead. And other times they know exactly what they want and they can kind of run with it. So.
Awesome. Okay, we have a follow-up question from Devins from Rachel. She asks, have you ever had a client go silent so that waiting on feedback drags things out? And how would you handle that?
Yeah, that's happened. And again, it comes back to, hey, we're just going to have to follow you down until we get an answer. They know that they've agreed to a set amount of time. I think maybe because we set ourselves up that way, we don't run into this problem very often. And if it does happen, it's just like a gentle nudge of like, this is time that you're paying for. So I don't know that it really runs into as a problem, like for the designers, especially. We do have a system, so we'll report to the creative directors. The creative directors might reach out and get in touch. They may reach out to the account director, who will reach out and get in touch. And but we push along. We know that we have these objectives. We've set up the project, and we know what has to get done in that amount of time, and we try our best to do it. But it's very rare. It has happened, but rarely.
Awesome. Okay, so should we move into the web things, and then after maybe a little bit of business questions, and then that's it, because I feel like we've abused you guys already.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let me share my screen again. And we're going to follow Alex, who's going to walk us through what that process looks like in between brand and web handoff for SafePal.
Awesome. And Benton's being modest. He led this project, so I'm going to let him kind of speak up where we need to. But yeah, if you follow me in Figma. So SafePal, a good example. The brand team had a lot of stuff prepared for us in this project, and that's a good thing for us. I think sometimes there's maybe an expectation that the web team should take the brand and then go crazy and make all this original content. But I think at the same time, it's really, really nice to have a great foundation. And so in this instance, SafePal had the brand team created all these assets for the SafePal brand. And so if we're looking at this Figma file, their final presentations included all sorts of custom illustrations and assets for us to use. And it's a great foundation, all kinds of colors and stuff. And so that just made our job a lot easier. And so what we do is we do a second round of mood boards. We call them stylescapes, and they're a bit more centric for web. And so what we do is we take what the brand team has done, and then we do kind of a quick mock-up based on a couple potential style options or directions. And so it'll feel very similar to what the brand team has done, but it's also our own kind of spin on it in some ways. And we're trying to take what the brand team has done and extend it beyond. And so that sometimes means creating new colors and styles and things. But in this instance, we had, like I said, all those wonderful assets to pull from that we were able to kind of take all those pieces and kind of just put them on the page, almost like Lego blocks, and kind of make different layouts and things. And so what we do is we create these stylescapes, which are taking some of those looks and feels, illustrations, colors, and then we go out onto the web and to Dribbble and Pinterest and all the other great portfolio sites and find a ton of inspiration that we can pull in. And so we're creating, again, like sort of a secondary mood board that's a lot more centric to web. And so we pull in other examples that are using, a similar look and feel that we might want to go with for the web. And then we have additional like illustration examples and et cetera. And so we had two potential directions. This first direction was very, very similar to what the brand team had done. almost exclusively. And then this second style was using some, I won't say rejected concepts, but like ones that weren't necessarily chosen as the final, that were again somewhat dictated by the brand team, but it was a chance for us to kind of go off on our own and explore and kind of go crazy with it. So this style was a lot more moody, kind of singular color. We don't have almost any of the green that was kind of prominent in the first style, and then using some of these assets in a fun way.
Hey, Alex, do you want to explain what a stylescape is for anyone that may not be familiar? Like, it is similar to a mood board, but how's it different?
Yeah, and I don't know if I have a great definition of it either. I mean, it is similar to mood board, whereas I'd say the mood boards are maybe a bit more abstract in sense where they're finding packaging and different logos and things. It's not necessarily having to, like, not every single thing has to relate to a specific style. I'm not sure that makes sense, but like our stylescapes are a lot more focused on, we know we have a good brand foundation to go off of. And so we include lots of that stuff, but then we also find examples of similar things. And so it's less about creating a mood and more about creating consistency, I'd say, is probably the difference. And so you're finding assets and things that help extend that current brand. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with more kind of abstract references, if that makes sense. I think that's a good example. Benton, feel free to chime in if there's what you want to say.
Yeah, I would say one thing I think that helps, that differentiates those, is we're actually designing. We're doing some designing as well. We're taking some of these assets, like for example, these heroes, we're creating those. We're not just like grabbing inspiration and pasting them in here. So we're trying to create more of a mood. Like these are like really rough iterations of what the web style could look like. So these are all things that we created to present to the client. So it saves us a lot of time in before we get into the hi-fi like design stage.
Awesome.
So I'll let you keep rolling.
Cool. So yeah, after the stylescape stuff is done, we usually have a couple meetings with the clients, and we have them kind of leave individual comments and things. They do approve one direction, but we also allow clients to come in and comment on particular aspects of certain things, because we're able to sort of pick and choose for the most part, because they're not all so wild, vastly different from each other. They're all sort of in that same vein that the brand team helped us set up. And so they leave comments and things, and then we usually have like a finalized version of the stylescape that we get a stamp of approval on. And then we don't have any examples in this file, unfortunately, but we get into wireframing. And so that goes back to that question about content. Whatever direction the client chooses in terms of content, it's either pulling from their existing homepage, or we have some leads on copywriting or whatever it is, an outline. We go off and create our wireframes, which are super low fidelity versions of what the homepage might look like based on that content. And we're not really beholden to those. We can kind of use it as a sort of a reference point so that the client can kind of see, this is what we're thinking about for your homepage. And so we take those wireframes and the stylescapes, and then we dig into the actual design. And so there's some comments about how messy the file was and stuff. I wish you could see the web files, because it's basically, if you zoom out here, it's like this times 10 sometimes, where we have so many versions of the homepage that we're playing with. And so we focus a long time on the hero section. So the top third of a page, the first thing that people are going to see when they load the homepage, we focus so much time on that one element, because that sort of helps dictate what the rest of the website is going to look and feel like. And so we take those wireframes and the stylescapes, and we come up with a bunch of different styles. We do things called team pushes, where we open it up to anyone at Unfold who wants to come in and just kind of play for an hour. So we have usually a prompt of like, hey, we're working on this particular thing, go crazy. And we have some banks of the river, but we generate tons of ideas in that hour, which is awesome. And then we kind of go back in and clean up which ones we think are the leading concepts, present them back to the client. So we're sort of chipping away and coming up with an overall style for the homepage. And so once we have that sort of hero section established, everyone's feeling good, happy with things, we sort of just move down the page, and the rest is, sort of based on that style that we establish. And so these are some of the examples of the finalized pages that we had for SafePal. And I wish we could show more of the iterations. There's a ton of them, but this was, I forget how many weeks it was from, start to finish, from original stylescapes to the finalized homepage. But quite a few iterations went into this, and different things that we're trying. We're pulling in assets from the product team, from the brand team, some of their existing imagery and things like that. And so we're just extending that brand kind of down the page.
Alex, I have the file open. Do we want to show them the messiness?
Yeah, let's do it. This is kind of, yeah.
All right. So yeah, so we started with Stylescapes. We had a bunch of options where we pulled in, like Alex said, here are those wireframes. I know people were asking about those. This is about the fidelity that we design at. So we still bring in the type, but we keep it pretty low key. We do try to at least hint at the component styles and functionality. And we basically work with the client to refine those, and we start pulling in actual content until we get that solidified. So you can see we have a few iterations, and most of the time we'll try to work to get all of the pages done ahead of time, but sometimes due to copy or timeline adjustments, sometimes we'll just kind of design a few at a time. And then we have this isn't even all of the design exploration. This is some of it. This file is actually pretty large with all the illustrations, so it's kind of slow. But we actually archive a lot of what we explore because it slows everything down. We've got all these awesome illustrations from the brand team. But yeah, we've got plenty of stuff. Yeah, see, my computer doesn't even want to cooperate right now. But to show you a little bit behind the scenes. Oh, there we go. See. All right, Alex, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, I mean, so that's pretty much it. If there's any more questions, I mean, the pages kind of come together, over a couple of weeks. We collaborate with illustrators, and then we might pull the brand team back in and make sure that we're, staying consistent and true to the brand that they established. And so it's a really collaborative process. So this would be an example where we didn't have icons for these. And so Benson and I, and then some of the illustrators work together to create these. And so the illustrators might sketch a bunch of ideas and then present some, and then we kind of, based on what the client says, refine those and kind of extend what these original illustrations were to accommodate our needs here. So yeah, the homepage this is a pretty long homepage, I'd say. But we tried a bunch of different styles. We went to sort of a light mode here and found that those assets work, in both light and dark modes. But really, it's just a matter of kind of filling in the content and making sure it's all looking good. We do responsive versions of each page as well. So we do a mobile mock-up. And then if there's time and if there's a need, we also do some animated prototypes and things. And so our web creative director, John Eicher, is fabulous at this. He goes in and he can take a concept like this, and in like 20 minutes, he has this like fully fleshed out interactive like animation that's just like beautiful to look at. And so what that does is it gives the client, a further insight into what their website could look like if, we sort of allocate time for those animations and things. And it adds a bit more of a dynamic look and feel to the site. So this is just two examples of, this is like a more of an that we pulled in photos and use those assets and sort of extend those out by using additional treatments and things.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's it, right? Then the web team takes it and just develops on Webflow. Is there anything else you guys want to add there?
I saw a question come in about, let me scroll up. Love to know your process. How do you approach QC Benton and Alex come up with a really complex design, like going into Webflow? And so like my approach to this has kind of always been, I'm not going to like step in. I mean, there are times where sometimes I've had to because they get really crazy, but I try to stay like as much hands off as I possibly can, just because I don't want to stifle their creativity. I want them to build like the craziest thing that they have in their head, and then I'll put it on myself to try and figure out a way to make it work. And if there's just not a way, I've exhausted all options, then I'll go back to them and say, we can do this 95% of the way in Webflow, but we need to change just one tiny thing. And then that's usually fine. But yeah, that's kind of how I handle it. It's just hands off, don't stifle their creativity. Just want them to come up with something crazy, because I know for myself, I will, like when I was, now I am pretty much just doing Webflow. Before, when I was doing design and Webflow, when I would design things, I would design for Webflow. and I was like, oh gosh, all my sliders look the same. Or, you know, you know what I mean?
Or let me not make that slider.
Yeah, let me not. Yeah, I would love creating that slider. Anyways, yeah, so I just try to be really hands off. And then as far as like, you know, maybe something that would be more brand related. I know Alex touched on Iker coming in and maybe doing some different animations of how things could move, but it's really, for me, the only thing that goes back to brand, because my only job is just to make exactly what they have in the Figma file as good as I can on web, is to, you know, I always use this example, but let's say you're building a photography site and you have a image that you're hovering on and it's a very like dark, moody site. You know, I want those interactions to be as attached to the brand that they've created already. So maybe it's something very slow with lots of smoothing, but you know, I use this example too, but maybe you're a studio with like bright red color and very punchy headlines. You know, if I hover over something, I don't want it to be super smooth and moody. I want it to be punchy. And so that's the only time that, you know, things that I'll do will come back in and I'll reference, you know, what was the kind of like mood that they're trying to establish with everything they've been doing. And I want the interactions on the site to match that too.
Nice. Very cool. Okay.
Can I make a quick question?
Yes.
Since we're talking about animation, do you guys incorporate animation and motion design into the branding, the process for creating the brands, or is this just like something that comes in when you start doing the creative process for the web design side of things?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of who would be best to answer that. Evan? Gabe?
Well, for what type of animations or interactions specifically? Like, is it more like micro interactions and stuff, or is it like transitions from like the hero to the next section, or like that the way the sliders, like what?
Yeah, like I mean like motion in general. For example, when designing the logo, do you ever like think how could you take that logo and like give life to it with animation, some motion, or other visual assets? For example, illustrations that you create on the brand process, or other visual assets. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to know if like emotion sometimes it's on the process of creating the brand, or it's just like something that usually comes in when you pass over to the web team.
Yeah. I will probably let Gabe and Daniel talk to that, just because I know that's something that we've been leaning into a little bit more in terms of motion becoming more of an integral part of the branding process. So I'll let you guys speak to that.
So I won't speak too much to it, but I will say that's something that we're actively looking to expand, I'd say, within our toolkit of what we can provide. I know that we work with a freelancer throughout the branding process. Normally, once we have like assets finalized and things ready to go, then we have a meeting with a freelancer, if it's in scope, of course, to talk through what that looks like. And from a brand perspective, we give them our vision of specific motion elements, because interestingly enough, I do feel like motion can sometimes take the back seat, but that does have a huge implication in terms of how people perceive and like understand your brand. And I would say the same thing for sound too. That's another like whole other part that you can brand. But like, you know, Butter, for example, like with the little interactions, like they're branding themselves through sound as well, you know. And if they were to take the time to design their own sounds, right, that could be a thing that like Butter can own. So yeah, I would say motion and sound, those are two things that, you know, we would love to incorporate more of, but in particular motion as well. So it's kind of like a touch base of, here we have assets, let's, you know, work through what that motion can look like. Yeah, I'll kind of just leave it at that. I can't really speak so much as to what it's like on web, as much as I can to branding. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah. And I'm guessing a lot of it probably depends on like the industry that brand is in. Sometimes motion lends itself more easily to be something required for brands like in more of a digital space versus something that's like a physical product. Then the branding and logo stuff may require a little bit more intention from the motion side of things. But again, I'm not even a brand designer, so that's just my side.
No, you got it.
Nice. So awesome. Okay. So I feel like I want to talk to Eddie more on the business side of things for the business owners here, the agency owners. First of all, congratulations on this team you have built and have helped come together. I feel like apart from them, everybody being very talented, the culture is so strong. So I just want to hear more about your experience as the head here and like how you run this in more like a, you know, global scale of things, not like the nitty gritty, but just a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's three of us, three heads. There's two more partners that are not here. But yeah, I mean, overall, you met some of us, and this is who we are, and the rest of the team is like very, I don't know, just very super talented people that enjoy being together, working together every day. Would you have specifically what you would like to hear about Unfold? Because I feel like a lot of it's been already shared.
I know that I treat our Unfold Slack as like my new social media. Like we just love to interact with each other. We have so many channels that have nothing to do with work related stuff. Movies, cars, it's just so much more than you come to a 9-to-5 job. Like I really treat my Slack like I'm opening it all day, just seeing what people are doing in their lives. Like it's a very tight knit group, in my opinion.
There's a lot of Giphies being shared. Evan is the master of dead jokes, and everyone's got different strengths.
I like that my strength is dad jokes from you, Eddie. Thanks. I'm just playing.
It really is a strength.
We have color games in our team, so we have separated. We started doing like little avatar pictures profiles. One of our illustrators, Bo, he illustrated all our faces, and he dropped like random backgrounds, and they ended up being like our gangs. And we usually those people always got some roasts against each other. It's always fun to see who's getting stronger. It's pretty fun.
That is so cool. Okay, so I hear that you guys are working on some web courses on web design or educational material for web design. Do you guys want to talk about that? If anybody here would be interested in that?
I can speak a little bit to it. Hiba is the one that's kind of spearheading a lot of that, and unfortunately she's sick and out today. So she would be able to do a much better job than I would. But yeah, we're working on a variety of things, educational content and courses. So I've got a newsletter form that if anyone wants to sign up for, just kind of stay in the loop with all of that, you can, as well as we're working on a variety of things for our YouTube channel as well, where we'll be sharing more insights and things on there. So I will, I've got it kind of typed up here, some links if anyone wants to sign up for that, but just to kind of stay in the know. And I know specifically there's a website and a branding course that's actively being worked on currently. So I'll throw it in the chat though, some links.
Oh, I'm interested on the branding. Who's coming with me? I'm sure a lot of people here would be super interested. Yeah. We're all there.
Melissa, can I ask a question about like business stuff?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's obviously a given that you guys do contracts which just wouldn't make sense if you didn't. But I think more specifically from like a beginning to end standpoint, what does that look like for you guys? Do you guys do RFPs? That's request for proposal for those who don't know. Do you send out proposals like, for the clients that kind of agree on things? And if you do, what do those look like? Are they basic, or would you rather spend that time, getting into Figma and doing like, really nice wireframes for the client? Or do you send them really beautiful little proposals with like lots of details in them?
Yeah, we do have. See, not everyone's here. Like I'm not personally handling that, but we have people that prepare proposals, and we take it serious. And we never, like, it used to be back when I was doing this solo. It was a lot, I would wing things, but now like we've grown quite a bit, and we have to do it right. So yeah, maybe on like I said, or you guys mentioned on one of the podcasts, we can dive into that a little deeper and go through.
Yeah, and I know
business stuff is set up.
Yeah, and Eddie mentioned like he's one of 3 partners. So I think the main guy, Peter, is kind of the one that kind of handles and takes care of a lot of that stuff. And I know in general we try to get as much information as we can to figure out what the scope of work is, and then what the RFP is, just so that we know from a timeline side of things what to expect. And there's a lot of, I know that we've got a variety of clients and potential projects we're always juggling. So being as accurate as we can with the amount of time a project is going to take up is obviously beneficial to allow us to slot those things in where we can. So we don't necessarily do any design work for that kind of stuff up front. But in terms of like getting as many details as we can, we might have a few meetings with the client before any of that, even with the design team members or creative directors for the project, so that they're able to kind of get a general understanding too and scope things out. And a lot of times we won't even let each other know necessarily what our gut is in terms of time frame, and then we'll all come back with like time frames that we're thinking, just so that we're not biased in any one way. And then we try to do our best job to take a guesses in terms of what the project is going to call for, and the amount of time and resourcing that requires as well. I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking. Like I said, Peter's the guy that handles that, and he's not here. So that's my best answer for you.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, and you started by yourself, and then you started adding your partners?
Yeah, so that was a while back. I was just hiring contractors here and there, and then David, my brother-in-law, actually, I believe it was in 2017, he was working with Peter, and he lost his job, and he came and said, "Hey, man, I lost my job," and I was actually at that point was considering doing, growing the team, and we shook our hands, and we, started working together as partners, and really started like focusing on building a team. And I think Evan is probably one of the OGs here. He joined our team first. And yeah, little by little somehow, and then Peter was working with David, and we've been chatting with him here and there, and he's the one that would probably have better, he could walk you through how we do proposals and all the like serious stuff. I'm still very much a designer. Like I love visual work, as I dropped in the messages. So I don't think I ever want to just quit designing. It's so much fun for me, at least, and I want to continue doing that. But yeah, there's 3 of us. Maybe we'll chat about it more sometime.
Nice. Okay, so I don't know if people want to maybe unmute yourselves if you have any other questions. If not, then we can stop the recording on or the stream on YouTube, and whoever wants to stay for the after party can stay, and whoever needs to go back to work can go back to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think we ever even planned to be this. I mean, 30 plus people big. That was never like a goal, or we didn't have any like crazy strategies to get here. It just kind of happened organically. Like we just enjoy working together, and somehow good people, like we shake hands. We meet at the Creative South again. I'm gonna point at Evan's hat. We meet there annually, and we shake hands. We hug necks and make good friends, and that's who we are. We just somehow it happened, and obviously it's a lot of work and effort that's going into like making sure people would enjoy being here and be a good fit. But yeah, we honestly we don't force things, and we're letting things happen more like a more organically.
Yeah, it's not like we are a family, act like a family. No,
Yeah,
it's just like fell into place.
Yeah, and every day we just enjoy being working together. Like I said, we have this morning huddle calls, which we call huddle. Yeah, we have fun questions, jokes, just hanging out, having a good time. Not necessarily like pushing and stressing work, but
yeah.
And being open, being always available to like hear people's concerns, questions. We're always open to if anyone has ideas or anything that could be improved. We're always here. Like we'll make time to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna add this because I know Eddie won't say it, but at least from my perspective, working there, I think that the culture stems a lot from the three guys kind of at the top, and Eddie, Peter, and David, and it's literally just one thing. At least for me, is just like they put the people there above pretty much anything else, like bottom line, everything. And when they do that, it all just kind of trickles down, and we treat each other like that. And so it's really just like leading by example.
Those questions always that always happens, and we love to ask questions like that. Like if you have a certain hobby, like is that something that you're applying on your work, or it's just like you're focused on delivering for the client and just like all your practice and your experience is applied there? You know what I mean?
My what I was going to say doesn't exactly answer the question, but I found like in my day-to-day life now that a lot of my decisions are all based off like design. Like if I'm looking for like a food app or something, like I'll literally look at everything in the app store and half the time choose based off how it's designed. I just can't get away from it. Functionality, I need a good UI.
Yeah. Cool. Any more questions, guys? No? 3?
Yeah, am I the only one from Florida here? I think so. Yeah. Yeah, our office got completely wiped. It's destroyed. I don't know if any of you followed me on Twitter. I shared some pictures, but yeah, we're still recovering. But overall, everyone's alive. Everything else is replaceable. So that's
where is the office?
Right in the heart of Hurricane Ian. Like we're right where it went through. You just literally we got hit head on. Yeah. It was pretty bad, but we were stuck. I was like stuck in my neighborhood for 10 days without power or internet or water. So that was a challenge. Being home with
Northport.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Orlando, and it hit us, but not that bad. Thank God. So that's good.
It's good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Sarasota. That's why I asked the question.
Oh, okay.
We thought we were going to get smacked, and then last minute it went south and got y'all. So that's why I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad you all made it through. And anyway, thanks for sharing, and even going back to everything, just being involved and sharing so much with the community. It's cool to see the design and the Webflow community kind of collaborating a lot like this. I like.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. You literally have inspired people here so much. These conversations are so important because we are basically working by ourselves at home, a lot of us. So it's very nice to see your process. We admire you guys so much. And this is just going to be gold for people to rewatch and learn from you. This is open for whenever you guys want to come back. If you just want to hang out, we're always here every Friday. So thank you so much.
Thank you
And that's
guys,
it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity.
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yay. Well, thank you so much to YouTube. I always say Twitter, YouTube. We're getting there. And yeah, thank you.